My generation cares a lot about climate change and a clean environment, and so I too care about it. We have a vested interest in developing cleaner energy and ensuring that the air we breathe is clean. No one would dispute that, despite the highly dishonest claims about denialism from the other side. That kind of language is meant to divide and cause resentment. But I also have an interest in getting to the truth of the problem, the actual costs we can expect, and the most reasonable, efficient, and plausible solutions. This is where our two sides differ fundamentally. The narrative on the left is that catastrophe is looming and that no cost is too high. Well, of course, this isn't true. Costs do matter. Proper estimates of our ability to adapt to climate change matters. Common sense analysis of the problem does matter. A true cost-benefit analysis free from political bias does, in fact, matter. So let's do away with some of the most absurd claims right away. For instance, that climate change will cause not just heat-related deaths in massive numbers, but hundreds of thousands more murders and sexual assaults. That's what was testified earlier. Is this a serious claim? No, it isn't. Of course it isn't. You make such a claim if your goal is to torpedo good discussions right off the bat. Warren Cass, here testifying today, has already done an excellent job debunking the bad and frankly highly dishonest economic modeling used to come up with those absurd numbers, so I won't dwell on that. I do want to dwell on real solutions, not insane Green New Deal solutions based on a false premise, not a Paris climate agreement which foolishly undermines the most innovative economy in the world, the United States, while freeing up China and India to continue pumping out emissions, or any other ridiculous solutions that rely solely on solar and wind. These are feel-good solutions. They're based on flowery notions of vision and purpose, as opposed to serious policy ideas. Serious policy ideas will take advantage of the greatest innovation machine the world has ever known, the U.S. economy. We should be focused on providing the world with cheap, clean energy that can thrive in the marketplace. The U.S. is responsible for around 15% of global emissions. That is what a Green New Deal would address, 15%. For an enormous $93 trillion price tag, you address just a fraction of the problem. We should be addressing 100% of the problem, and the only way to do that is to export our expertise. In Houston, we have a privately backed investment, like the Net Power plant. It's in LaPorte, right outside my district. This plant burns natural gas to generate electricity, which is already cleaner than most fossil fuels and is readily available in the Permian Basin, just 2 hours away from Texas Tech. Thing is, this natural gas plant has zero emissions. It captures the carbon it emits and recycles it into the power plant. No emissions, and it's self-sustaining. Natural gas fracking has had an enormous impact already, reducing our emissions greatly. What if we did a better job exporting clean natural gas to dirty coal-burning countries like China and India? Well, we can answer that. The Department of Energy estimates that the promise of natural gas plus carbon capture is so great that if China and India switched just their coal-burning boilers to natural gas, they would reduce emissions by 43%. Add in full-scale turnover to natural gas and carbon capture, and you're looking at an 88% reduction in carbon emissions. More natural gas exports, carbon capture technology, modular nuclear reactors, research on nuclear fusion, these are the future. They work, and they can make our air cleaner, keep growing our economy, and provide sustainable energy for our growing global needs. We must also invest in adaptation, as human beings have been doing for thousands of years. There's a reason that climate-related deaths have dropped drastically over the last 100 years, by around 90%, even though our population has increased by orders of magnitude. We must have realistic projections of the costs of climate change, followed by realistic solutions. That's the way forward. My time for a question. Ms. Hayhoe, if I may give you one question. There's a lot of estimates on the cost, but what I never hear, and what I think the right question to ask is, if we implemented the most extreme solutions, let's just assume the Green New Deal. Let's assume zero emissions in 10 years coming out of the United States. What would be the effect on the global What would be the global effect of that? What would be the temperature effect? What would be the effects after that? Do we measure those things?
First of all, if you look at cumulative emissions, which is what climate does respond to, the U.S. is responsible for just under 30% of those. If the U.S. eliminated its emissions, it would actually have an impact beyond its current 15%, because as you pointed out, that technology would percolate around the world, and that leadership would have a huge impact in places that are emerging economies and developing.
What technology? What technology does the Green New Deal create?
Gentleman's time has expired.